Just remember, you're going to just click arrow when you're ready to go to the next one. That's all you gotta do to take it next.
And it's gonna go through each one of them.
Yeah, one at a time. Okay. All right. You good? That's good. So we want to say for just a moment that we're thankful that everybody's made it out tonight to join us as we get to hear an experience and a story from what I'm going to say is one of our own. She comes to church with us, and if you didn't know it, she's now hitting the singing notes from the back. Well, no, you're in the choir too. But she has been doing some singing all the way in the back too, so she's adding to the resume here. She keeps going. She's doing good. But we do want to say tonight that I want to say this from this side of the seat. Steve can tell you from this side of the seat that this is a big step. Okay, to turn around and face all of you, now we're getting to a big step. If you've ever taught or dealt with anything teaching wise, Robert can tell you about this is a whole nother step right here. Okay, this is a step on faith, unlike what you do to come to class. Holly's now getting to be up here to share her testimony. So we're thankful for her, but I want her to know before she ever starts that we're proud of her.
Yes.
Just the effort of willing to do something. We want to commend that effort. We're proud of that. So if anybody at any time, Holly will tell you that if anybody anytime has something they'd like to ask or say, you're going to be welcome to do that. You can trip off her brain hairs and let her answer all the questions for you. The only thing I ask is make sure your phones are on silent. Okay? Just so we don't have any interactive interference with streaming for some. Her mom and some others are watching tonight that could not be here. Her mom is still recovering, dealing with cancer. So we do want them to not have anything interfering with our stream tonight so they can see and hear everything that goes on. So I'm going to turn it over to Sister Holly now, and she's going to have your time from here on out. Tony, you coming up to do something? Okay.
Well, first, I'm super nervous. So forgive me if I stumble through some of this, but I'm extremely nervous. And I've never really shared my story with anybody. Obviously, my children and my boyfriend. But outside of that, I have not. So I feel like I'm just nervous. So, yeah, we'll just say that. So, for starters, my name's Holly Frericks, also known to the United States government as inmate number 540-69074. I have 3 boys, Jesse, Nathan, and Virginia. Jesse, Nathan, and Cameron, and 3 daughter-in-laws, Tiffany, Virginia, and Hannah. I also have 3 grandsons, Cooper, Hudson, and Jackson. I'm 44 years old, and my fiance's name is Will. This is my children. The top one is me and my 3 boys, and then everybody else falls in. That's Nathan and Virginia, Jesse and Hudson, and Tiffany, and that's Cameron and Hannah and their boys. It's my grandbabies. Cooper is the oldest. The middle one is Hudson, and this one is Jackson. They're amazing. This is my fiance, Will. He's an incredible guy also. This is my mom and dad. My mom's name, this is my stepdad, Ed, which is also the dad that raised me. So that's important to know. But this is my mom, Deanna, and my stepdad, Ed. I have 4 living siblings that my mother birthed. My sister Heidi, she's the oldest, then myself, and then we have 2 living siblings, brothers, and then 2 brothers that are deceased. Okay, so back to the beginning. I was born in Pontiac, Michigan, and my father, Terry, lived most of his life in the United States Army, and he became an alcoholic and extremely abusive to my mother. When I was 2 years old, my parents divorced, and when I was 3, my mom remarried my stepfather, Ed. At that point, Terry signed his rights off to me and my sister, and over the next several years, my mom and Ed had 4 boys, one which was born stillborn. So I want you guys to think back to when you were a child. Not answer it right now, but just think back to what you wanted to be when you grew up. We'll come back to that question. When I was 9 years old, our father became disabled, and at that point, we moved from Michigan to Kentucky. We actually lived in Pineville up on Williams Branch, and at Left Fork Williams Branch, but anyways. And when I was 12 years old, I met my children's father, TJ. At 14, my sister, who was 16 at the time, got married and moved out, and within a couple months, my boyfriend's mom kicked him out and he moved in with our family. Also that same year, my dad had gastric bypass and spent over half the year in the hospital, and that caused many medical issues which he never recovered from. So fast forward, at 16, I found out I was expecting my first son, which is Jesse. At 17, I married their father, and I became pregnant with my second child my senior year and had him 2 weeks before I graduated. Within a year, I was pregnant with my third son. When I was 24 years old, I left my children's father and got a divorce. Within that same year, I had a tubal ligation, and after that procedure, I was given pain medication. But I soon discovered that my new boyfriend was taking my medication. It didn't take long to realize that the new boyfriend had a pill addiction. So I pose a question: do you think that the people we surround ourselves with can shape or influence the choices that we make? Good or bad, right? These are pictures of the boys. We had a great life. They were just full of energy and full of life. We just had a really good life. They were growing and everything was great. Within the first year, I was able to obtain a prescription from a family doctor for pain pills and Xanax. See, the thing of it is this new boyfriend knew all the ins and outs of getting prescriptions, as he'd been living that life for years. What actually started out was a way for him to save money, to not have to purchase pain pills from other people, quickly became a full-blown addiction for myself. From 2016 to 2011, I was arrested and charged with DUI 8 times. I had multiple public intoxication, including even going to court under the influence, and I was arrested for public intoxication in the courtroom. I was involved in 2 car accidents and literally jumped from one bad relationship to another. I was clean and sober for almost 3 years. They had given me a drug court stint, and in completion of the drug court, it expunged 3 of the DUIs off. That'll come in a lot later. Anyways, so in 2011, November, my boyfriend, who was Philip at the time, was arrested for trying to kill me. He had become very abusive over the years. He was later sent to prison, and the state of Kentucky issued a domestic violence order of protection for me and my children, and he wasn't allowed to come within 500 feet of us upon his release. Within 2 days of him being arrested, my father passed away. I don't know if you guys know a lot about addiction, but oftentimes when there's one addiction, it's coupled with other issues. And although my addiction was to Xanaxes, I also struggled with codependency. I had a fear of never wanting to be alone, and that caused so many other problems. These are 2 of the DUIs that I got, and then the white shirt is when I was accepted into drug court. That was 2008, 2009. On November 30th, 2 weeks after my dad passed away, within a month of Philip going to jail, I started dating a new guy named Randy. In 2011, he drank a lot. So what did I do? I started drinking in addition to taking the pills. On December 7th, I ended up having alcohol poisoning, and I woke up on the ventilator. I later found out that my middle son, Nathan, had actually heard me fall off the toilet in a pile of puke, and he was the one who called the ambulance, and then they had to shock my heart twice to get a heartbeat back. So, very scary time. Anyways, everything escalated from using pain pills and Xanaxes. From there, it moved on to Suboxone and Subutex, and it eventually led to shooting up cocaine and methamphetamine. When we started using meth, things escalated so quickly. And one of the things Nathan has told me since I come home from prison is, Mom, I remember when you stopped cooking for us boys. Like, he remembers that, you know, and that was so devastating to me. But I needed to hear that. We started using methamphetamine in February of 2016, and by July we had literally lost everything. And I mean everything. I mean our vehicle, my oldest son Jesse's vehicle. We had pawned and sold everything that we could to support our habit, and of course we weren't paying bills. So in July, here come the sheriff department with the landlord and several men, and they literally set our personal belongings out on the lawn. It was the saddest point of my life up until that day. My boys had to go stay with their friends because I literally had nowhere to go. And I spent the next 2.5 months staying in trap houses, hotels, and really anywhere that I could lay my head with this new guy that I had married. Not having the boys with me was a different type of pain that I had ever felt before in my life. Yes, I was getting high, but it was just unlike anything I had ever experienced. But the charges kept coming. I continued taking Xanaxes. I continued getting high. And within 2.5 months of being evicted, I knew that I had to make changes in order to, if I ever wanted to get my boys back under the same roof. I knew that something had to change. Like, I couldn't continue doing what I was doing if I ever planned on getting my boys back. So in September, I moved to Corbin with my mom, and I got clean. You know, I got a job at the local factory. My youngest son, Cameron, moved in with me in Corbin, and my two oldest boys actually stayed with their biological father. Well, they stayed at his house. He was a truck driver, so he wasn't there during the week, but my boys were older at this time. So things were progressing. I was able to finance my own vehicle, which I still didn't have a license, but that's neither here nor there. I don't know how I got it other than I did. So, but things were progressing so slowly. Like, things were progressing and I was getting my life back on track, but it was at such a slow pace, and I could never shake the feeling of not having my boys together. You know, like, as a mother, it was just my desire was to have my kids together. You know, it was such a pain I can't explain. So I posed this question: have you ever found yourself so desperate for something that you would go to any extent to make it happen? You know, I wanted more than anything in this world to be reunited with all three of my boys. In 2017, I started dating a new guy who checked all the boxes, right? He had a house, he had a vehicle, he had a job, stability. At that point, it wasn't even about dating him. It was literally about moving in and getting my boys back. And that's what I did. So within a month of living with him, I had all three of my boys back under one roof. Everything was going great, or so it appeared. But within 2 months, this new boyfriend was picked up in a drug trafficking ring. Things from there just spiraled so quickly. Over the next 17 months, he was arrested numerous times for possession and trafficking. So in that mindset, what did we do? Instead of facing the charges, we moved across state lines to Tennessee. The amount of drugs that we were moving at that point were beyond comprehension, honestly. And I truthfully didn't realize the extent of it until much later, once my mind cleared out and I was in prison for a while. But I put myself in some of the craziest situations. You know, I was traveling states away by myself with large amounts of money to pick up large amounts of drugs because the guy that I was dating was too paranoid to cross state lines, you know. And then within a year, the very thing that I had worked so hard to get, my boys, they were none living with me. They were all back at their dad's. And I couldn't blame them. I couldn't blame them. Who would want to be subjected to everything that they were being subjected to? When we moved across state lines, my son Nathan never stepped foot at our trailer from then on. He never once came over there. And the drugs had turned this man into a paranoid, abusive psychopath. It was crazy. The last day that we were in the trailer was on December 20th, and I remember it just as vivid as it was yesterday. He had me on my knees with the barrel of his gun pressed to my forehead. I honestly thought for sure he was going to kill me. I remember thinking, like, this is it. I'm going to die. But I'm begging and pleading him not to kill me, and I am crying out to God, a God that I wasn't even sure existed at that point. So fast forward, and as you can see the progression of the drugs, you know, and how things spiral so quickly, even though you don't realize it. By this point, my children were already back at their dad's. But God had another plan. The morning after that was December 21st, 2018. It was 17 months after I started dating the new guy. Our home was raided by the Claiborne County Sheriff Department. I was arrested 17 days later and charged with an array of charges stemming from the house raid and new charges from everything that I had in my possession at the time of my arrest. So that day, we were charged with a pound or greater of methamphetamine, 15 firearms by a convicted felon, which was my co-defendant, 500 rounds of ammunition, possession of drug paraphernalia, possession of Schedule 1, 2, and 3 narcotics, and knowingly possessing marijuana, and they seized $16,000 in cash. At the date of my arrest, they seized everything that was in my possession. And, you know, you don't think about the consequences of how it's going to affect everybody else, but my poor children all lost their vehicles, you know. They didn't even have a car because their cars were registered to me, and the feds, when they picked us up, they took everything that was seized or everything that was in my name. So my kids lost it all also. So what I seen that day was the end of my life, but God knew it was just the beginning. I was arrested on January 7th, 2019 on a warrant that was stemming from the raid. I'm not sure if any of you have ever been to jail or prison, but one thing about it is you have plenty of time to sit and think. Plenty of time to reflect on every single thing that you have ever done in your entire life while you're laying there on that very thin, cold mat, okay? I was in Max while I was in Claiborne County, but I just remember being so scared and so fearful. Plus, I was in full-blown withdrawal from the Xanaxes and other drugs that I had been taking for the past 17 months. You know, I was absolutely scared beyond belief. And I thought I was facing, or I knew I was going to be facing, a significant amount of time in federal prison. I honestly felt so helpless. I was so humiliated by the fact that I had allowed myself to be in this position, and shameful that I had become the mother and daughter I had become. I was so embarrassed to be known as a local drug dealer. So back to the question, what did you want to be when you grew up? So I posed that question because I can rest assure you, not one single person ever thinks when they grow up, I want to be a drug dealer, I want to be a drug addict, I want to do this, I want to do that. When I was a child, I wanted to be just like my mother. I wanted to grow up, I wanted to have a house full of kids, and I just wanted to be the best possible mother possible. Because that's what my mom was, you know? But obviously, I made poor decisions and poor choices that took me in a different direction. More mugshots. So on March 27th, 19th, I was federally arraigned for possession with intent to distribute 1.5 to 4.5 kilos of methamphetamine. That was a significant day because I showed up to the federal courthouse so high that my lawyer threatened, my kids don't know this, that my lawyer threatened to step away from my case because I was so intoxicated. it was only by God's grace that I didn't get more charges that day. But I to this day have never used another substance. Nothing, period. That was the last day I ever used, March 26th. And I have been clean ever since then. And the day that I was in court, that day they told me that I was facing 17 to 21 years was the maximum sentence that it carried. And I was just crushed, you know. Here I had had all these run ins with the law, but my parents had always bailed me out. I had never had to pay the consequences for anything, you know. Every time I was arrested, my parents were there to get me every single time. And not to fault them because, you know, my parents thought that that was the best thing to do. But I knew I was facing a lot of time. But on April 30th, I called home and I was talking to my boys. It was a day I will never forget. And you know, you hear things in your life that like change the course of your life, right? And my son Nathan, I talked to Jesse and Cameron, and it was almost Nathan's graduation day. And Nathan told me, Mom, this may not have been our plan for your life, but this was God's plan. And that crushed my soul. That devastated me unlike anything. I just can't even find adequate words to describe how hard that was for me. But he was right. You know, the consequences had to be paid because I had made the decisions that I had made. And, you know, and he was right. That night, I went back to my bunk and I cried until my face was swollen. But that night, I got down on my knees as my bunkie lay to sleep and I poured my heart out to the Lord. I surrendered every single thing I had ever had piled on me, and I begged and pleaded and asked Him to please help me. And my life has never been the same. From that moment on, I know that the Lord entered me and has never left me. I know what I know. I was incarcerated a total of 68 months. And during that 68 months, the Lord poured into me. As I said, what I seen as an arrest, the Lord seen as a rescue. You know, He had to strip away everything that I had hindering me to get my attention. So I was accepted to take numerous biblical classes, such as CASA, which is Christians Against Substance Abuse. Also accepted to take Focus, which is Follow Our Choices Unto Success, and Life Connection Program. I also got accepted to take Interpreting the Psalms, but that was actually once I got to prison. I was able to complete over 200 Bible studies and read the Bible during my incarceration 3 complete times. That's just some of the certificates that I received, some of the notebooks that I took notes in. This was my personal Bible. My Bible from prison, although it looks like it's falling apart at the seams, we Mod Podged it back together. It was the only thing that kept me together during my prison sentence. My children sent this to me, and I thought, oh my goodness, this thing is so big and so heavy, but Lord knew I needed something like that. And I hold on to it still to this day because I know the significance of what it gave me, you know? And you know, this is backing up a little bit, but you guys were dealing with COVID out here. And it's so crazy the difference in what we had to deal with being incarcerated, right? But you know, there was an 8-month period that we were locked down in our cells. Most of that time I didn't even have a bunkie. But you know, during that time, we would get out every 3 days for 30 minutes. You literally chose to either take a shower or to call your family, you know. But I was the closest to the Lord in them 8 months that I have ever been in my entire life. You know, I got up every day and I would spend hours in the Word. And it's like the Lord continued to put it on me. I craved being in His presence. I craved spending time with Him, and I could not get enough of it. And it didn't stop there. Like, the more I studied, the more I wanted to study. The more I learned, the more I felt like I needed to learn. And very early on, the Lord would put people or stories, for lack of a better word, that I would go and study. And I remember reading Rahab's story for the very first time and how much I could relate to her, you know? It was like a life of shame, but she wasn't gonna be she wasn't going to be defined by it, right? So I found so much encouragement from that. And also the woman at the well, you know, I could relate to that. And of course, the prodigal son. But I just felt like the Lord, he just, he knew what I needed in that moment and he just poured it into me. And I was like a little sponge soaking it all up. When I got home from prison, I had a whole tote of stuff that I had sent home. I'm like, how did you guys accumulate so much stuff? They were like, you kept sending it. I'm like, okay. But anyway, so is there a specific moment in your life when you look back and say, that's when the Lord saved me? I've talked about this with my kids. I attended Binghamtown Baptist Church as a child for many, many years, and I thought I was saved. I thought at that point that I was where I needed to be, but you know, as my boyfriend says, laying out fleece for God, right? And he has shown me time and time again that I was saved in that jail cell. Like everything before that didn't even matter, that he saved me in that jail cell. So I hope that everybody in here is saved. And if you're not, then I hope that you're able to come to a place that you're able to accept him as your Savior. The Lord didn't stop there, guys. At every facility that I was housed at, I mean, every facility. And again, if you don't have any know about it's a prison or jail, this is a pretty big deal. The Lord made a way for me to share him with others. Every place. In Knoxville, Tennessee, I got it approved through the jailer to do an 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. prayer walk with the girls in the pod. When I was moved to Lovejoy, Georgia, it was a process, but we got it approved to do a daily Bible study with the girls in the pod that chose to take place with it. And we also got it approved to do 2 walks of Jericho. So that was a pretty significant thing. In Laurel County, they approved us to do a Bible study in the pod with anybody that wanted to participate. We also did a dance on the armor of God to teach the girls how to remember, you know, the breastplate and the belt of truth and all of that. And we started doing weekly trivia games and biblical bingo. It was just a funner way to get everybody in the pod involved. And by the time I got to federal prison, I first went to a camp in Alderson, West Virginia. One of the assistant chaplains was able to help us get it set up to where we could hold a daily prayer group, but we had to do it in our hair room, which is in like the back part of the showers, but they still approved it. And we got to do daily Bible studies there. So I was approved as one of the first federal inmates to get approved to go from a camp where they raised your classification to move you to a Federal Correction Institute, which is basically, I was outside of the fence. I wasn't at an area where we had fences, but they were moving us to an area where there were fences, okay? And to participate in the Life Connection program. So previously, it had only been offered to incarcerated individuals that were behind the fence, so to speak. So that was a pretty significant. But the Lord continued to bless me beyond measure. He gave me so much favor while I was in prison. He gave me better jobs, such as working in medical. I worked for Unit Team, doing all their clerk work. I ran the email room and even got appointed to do the children's room at visitation. I was also hired on as a suicide companion. And every single job that I held in prison was a trusted position. So I never had to do the lower jobs. And I know that was God's favor, 100%. So let's see. In addition to that, I was also accepted to attend college. It's Bering Life University out of Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I received a grant and a scholarship that covered the cost. In addition to that, I was sentenced to 115 months, but out of nowhere, only by God's grace, I received a 12-month reduction when the Amendment 821 came in November 2023, reducing my sentence from 115 months to 103 months. That was God. In June 2024, I was able to complete and receive my associates in theology. And on August 13th, I was finally released from federal prison. So the day that I was released was the first time that I had had a physical embrace the entire time of my incarceration. I never had a person for multiple reasons. I think God was just protecting me, but I never had a visitor or anything like that. So the day that my kids picked me up it was crazy. And then on my way out, they gave me my associates. So I was really excited for that. Okay, things that I missed. These are significant things, right? I missed Nathan's graduation was the first monumental moment. That was in 2019. Then I missed Cameron, my youngest son's. I missed his senior night for football. That was a huge deal. And then his graduation. Then my oldest son and his wife got married. Then we found out that my youngest son and his girlfriend were expecting my first grandchild, in which she ended up miscarrying. But then they got pregnant again with Cooper. So I say, I missed out on a lot, but there was a lot gained too. My children's father, after our divorce, he faced his own demons and his own struggles. And so he took a step away from seeing our boys for, I think it was 7 years. He did see him a time or two in that, but it may not have been 7, may have been 6, I don't know. But anyways, it was a significant time. Well, me going to prison gave my children time with their father. And that time was priceless because he passed away from COVID. So he was 43 or 44. What was he? He was young, 43. And he passed away from COVID. So while I was in prison, my children had to bury their father, And at that time, my mother was on life support, fighting for her own life. So they all just went through so much. But so much was lost, but so much was gained. And I think back now, and I've talked to my boyfriend, I've talked to Cameron and Jesse. I think I've talked to Nathan about this. Like, it's a small price to pay. Yes, it was 68 months, but that was a small price to pay to know going forward the type of relationship that we have. And for my salvation, like that is just so priceless. This was at the halfway house. That was the day that I got to meet my grandbaby for the very first time. That was Cooper, and my daughter-in-law, Hannah. That was the first time I met her, too. Everybody was great, but I was so excited to be my grandbaby. And then I got to see Will for the first time, and then my mom and my sister. But God wasn't done even there. I was released from the halfway house after only 5 weeks to home incarceration or home confinement. That was almost 6 months sooner than what papers said I could be. I was hired for a remote position to work from home from a call center the day I left the halfway house, so God alleviated all that stress and pressure. I was approved by the state of Kentucky to do DUI classes on Zoom. That was a huge deal. Now, mind you, I had had 8 DUIs, okay? Legally, I wasn't even supposed to be able to get a driver's license. In the state of Kentucky, it's enhanceable up to 10 years, right? So they accumulate. But God, I had DUIs throughout because blood work didn't come back, officers didn't show up, completion because of programming. Like, there's no other way to see it other than it was God, because there's just no other explanation. So upon completion of the DUI classes and paying my fines off, they said I would be able to get my license reinstated. That was a miracle. In addition to that, I was accepted to college and able to do everything online. And with that, I've just now started my 3rd semester. In May, I completed all the requirements for the halfway house and was released from there to federal probation. And in May, I also completed all the requirements for my DUI. So my first 2 semesters, my first semester I made the dean's list, and my second semester I made the president's list. I'm pretty proud of that. In June, after nearly 10 years, I obtained a learner's permit, and the following week received my license. That was a sense of relief I don't even know how to explain. Also in June, I purchased my vehicle, which was by God's grace that I was able to pay cash and didn't have to finance it. In September, I officially got Joyful Confections up and going, which is my little baking side business. And it's been such a huge blessing to make sweet treats again. And I say again because during my addiction, man, I messed a lot of things up, a lot of things. And so I never thought that I would ever make a cake again because years and years ago, my addiction was to Xanaxes, and it's hard to function when you're taking a large amount of Xanaxes, and I didn't complete an order for a child's birthday, and it's just something that I never got over, and so I never thought I'd make a sweet treat or a cake again, but God's seen otherwise, and I'm very blessed for that. And it was the encouragement of my kids and my daughter-in-laws and my boyfriend and my mama, got to surround yourself with people that want to see you do better, and they definitely push me and motivate me. So after I got my license and my vehicle that next Sunday, I came to church here at Indian Creek, where I've been attending ever since. That's some of the cakes. See, the Lord knows what we need, and everything is done in His timing, not ours. One thing that Steve said that very first Sunday was that he wasn't trying to offend, but if it offended anybody, but that was between them and the Lord, because he was preaching what the Bible said. And I know Steve didn't know this, but God knew that I needed to hear that. And I've talked to Steve about this since then, even. Like, one of the things I struggle with was people preaching from an opinion rather than a biblical fact. And so God knew that I needed. But let me just back up and tell you what else happened. So while I was on home confinement, you can have 3 hours of religious time a week. So against the advice of my children and my boyfriend and my counselor at the halfway house, I wanted to go to church, folks. I was determined to go to church. So I have to go through this big thing. I have to get the church to approve me. I need all their information. I need their address, their phone number, basically how I'm going to get there, how I'm going to get back, and I have to turn this into my counselor. My counselor has to approve it. Well, these folks from the church don't call my counselor, wanting to know if they're going to be responsible for my actions while I'm at their church. So my counselor says, I'm not approving you to go, and I beg and plead, and she finally approves me to go. And let me tell you, try to go against what God wants you to do, honey. It never works out well. It was a terrible experience. I have never felt so uncomfortable in my entire life. But anyways, it was terrible. It was a terrible experience. Okay. But anyways, so going to prison, I would say that I was a woman that was beat down, running the ground, someone that had been used, abused, someone that had no self-worth, no confidence. I honestly felt completely worthless. I didn't even know who I was. I had no purpose, no hope, but God did. What I seen as being arrested, God knew was a rescue. What others thought that I was worthless, useless, never going to amount to anything, a drug dealing junkie. And without God, I'd venture to say that they were probably right. But God, Today I stand before you a woman that's confident of her salvation, a woman that's been restored and redeemed beyond anything that I could have ever imagined. So when I look back, I know that the 68th month was a small price to pay to have the remainder of my life. I know that I'm loved, chosen, redeemed, forgiven, accepted. I'm strong. I know that I'm more than enough. I'm a conqueror, I know that I'm a child of the Most High God, and nobody can strip that from me. And when I come home from prison, I had decided that I was cutting off all ties to anybody, anything. If you even whispered anything that had related to anything, I was done with it. Like, I knew I was never going back to prison for anybody or anything, right? I learned my lesson. And people started hitting me up on Facebook. And so at first I was so scared to even interact with them, but it was people that had completely changed their life around. And I started hearing stories of, one person told me, you going to jail saved my life. You went to jail, I got clean. I went to jail, my sister went to rehab. I went to jail, my brother got clean. Like more than 10 people that we know have completely turned their life around. And God kind of just showed me that sometimes it's not all about Holly, that there's a greater purpose and a greater lesson to be learned, so I'm grateful that I went to prison. Had I not went to prison, I would be dead because you couldn't continue in that lifestyle and walk away from it. So I'm very grateful for that opportunity. Now, of course, it wasn't all gravy. It was hard, We had it was just hard. I prayed Psalms 91. I can almost quote it. Well, a portion of it anyway, because I prayed it over my cell in my bunk every day because there was so much going on in prison. But was it the right choice to go from a camp to an FCI? I don't know about that, but we got approved and we went in. It was much scarier at the FCI than it was the camp. But God knew that it would be needed. God knew that I had to go through every single thing that I went through to ensure that I never went back to that. And He has blessed me so greatly. He's restored my relationships with all of my kids and my daughter-in-laws. And there's monumental moments or there's things that you go through that kind of ensure. And I hope my kids don't mind me saying this. I hope Jesse and Tiffany don't. But one of the things that devastated me, I called home and I had to have an address of where I could go, right? And I called Jesse and Tiffany first and they told me I couldn't come there. I was crushed. I went back to my bunk and I was devastated. Like, what do you mean? But I had to realize that I had put them through so much, And Jesse told me, Mom, the one thing we asked you not to do, you did. We asked you not to have people at our house, and you had people at our house. Like, you broke our trust. But let me tell you, it is that reason, and I'm telling you now, I will never break their trust again. And now I get to babysit my grandson all the time, while they work and they trust me, and they've even offered to let us come live with them now, but I mean, it's little things like God knows what we need. He knows what we need, and He knows that it was my children breaking it down to the raw bear that it would take for me. And, I just can't even explain how proud I am of them, because they could have went the other way, they could have turned to drugs and craziness, but they didn't, and that was God's grace. And I'm going to tell you another prayer that was answered. So when I gave my heart to the Lord, I started pouring into my boys and my mom because my kids weren't raised in church. So I'm like, man, is it too late for this now? Like, how are we going to turn this around? Like, what do we got to do? And I started praying. And next thing you know, Nathan gets hired and Paul is his boss. So, yeah. So that was an answered prayer. So then Nathan and Virginia's in church. Next thing you know, Jesse and Tiffany's in church. Cameron and Hannah's gone to church with her people. But I'm just like, God knows. He knows. And He knows far more than we do. But God has just blessed us and blessed me in ways that are unimaginable, honestly. And I'm just grateful for the opportunity to share my story, glorify God, because I'm going to tell you what, I wouldn't be standing here today if it wasn't for Him. If it wasn't for Him coming and plucking me out of that situation, I wouldn't even be sitting here. And anybody that's ever been in that situation, you know how scary it is. And I'm just thankful that God chose me, and I'm just grateful for the opportunity. So that's it.
Let's give Holly a hand. I do want to, just for a moment, I want to ask Holly a question.
Go ahead.
I say this a lot, but when in active addiction, and really there's no heart of it, you're just in it, but during that time, did you ever have the thought run through you that you're trying to figure out who you're supposed to be or who you are? At any point in addiction, did you ever wonder who I am?
I knew that this couldn't be all there was to life. I knew that, well, I think it was stages for me, right? Because, like, let me go back some. I think with some medications, you're able to function a little better, right? But with other, like here, I was taking pain pills, but I was still able to function. And then the Xanax started coming, right? So I think at that point, it's what everybody wants to say as a functioning addict. I still worked every day. I was still taking care of my families. But by the time that it had escalated to uh, shooting up, and cocaine and then methamphetamines, like I knew that there had to be more than life to life than that. But you get so wrapped up in it that you can't see a way out of it. And it's like you want to get away from it, but you don't want to have to deal with the the sickness of it, because it's so severe. So it's like a double-edged sword. So you don't want to be sick, but you don't want to be high. So I think like at some point I knew that I knew that there had to be more life than just getting high.
We see a very common thing here that no matter what a person goes through in their life, it may not even be a drug addiction. Something even just more simple than that to one thing, alcoholism, whatever it may be. But if you all notice a pattern that we see over and over again, is that once it's there, it takes over. It don't become part of your life. It is your life. There's no turning and separating yourself from it. It is your life. And Holly's not exaggerating when she says, I had a guy one time tell me that he quoted a Bible verse to me. Now he was under the influence of drugs when he told me. He said the Bible says to sell all you have and give it to the poor. Right. Well, he was selling all he had to buy his drugs. That's what he was doing, no joke. And he was selling stuff as hard as he could get it. Mm-hmm. Hard as he could find it. He wasn't stealing anything. He was selling his own stuff. Stuff that he had paid pretty good money for, he was letting go for nothing.
Absolutely.
For nothing. Because the only thing he seen was what he had to have to get the next. Mm-hmm. And then what I'm going to need to do to get the next. The devil loves to trap all of us. If you're not in here and under any form of history of an addiction, I'll tell you what, there is an addiction problem in this room. It's sin. Yes. And once it gets you and it bites you, you're bit. And that very thing, no matter, Holly's up here with the history of a life of various things, from drugs to multiple charges, jail time. How many years you think total from the first time you went to jail to the last time you walked out of one? How many years?
2008 was the first time I was arrested, and then I got out of prison in 2024.
Okay, so 17, 18 years, right there, easy or more. Look at the time frame of what it takes from us. And we all look at this so simple to say that a person with a drug problem or going to jail that has the problem. No, that's the same sin that encompasses every one of us every day. You think about that. It's not the drugs. That's just what the devil used as a tool to get a hold of her. With us, it's something else. Anger, frustration, anxiety, depression, all these things. That little hold that the devil holds on us is a mental trap to make us believe. And I see this all the time. Holly can tell you, a lot of people in the recovery centers, halfway houses, they're all the same. I'm trying to find my purpose. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to find my purpose. They'll never find it. They'll never find it. Who has your purpose? That's it. There's no way else out of this without the Lord himself. Romans 12:20, I pulled this because I thought of what Holly was saying. It's 12:21. It says, be not overcome of evil, but overcome evil with good. The only thing that is good is what? God. God is the only thing that is good. Psalms 34:14 says, depart from evil and do good, seek peace and pursue it. If you had the chance to go back and redo your life, you would.
Obviously.
Every bit of it. Mm-hmm. Looking back now and letting God show you what you missed. Right. Letting God show you what you could have been part of. You'd go back and redo that.
And addiction is it's so hard. because let me tell you, my poor children went through so much through my addiction, you know. And I remember my youngest son, he was 14 years old. It was 2 days before his 14th birthday. And I remember him like yesterday walking in and me having a needle hanging in my arm. And the scream that that child let out, because at that point I thought I was hiding it so well, you know. And another time, my oldest son walked in on me smoking meth, you know, like you would think as a normal person that that would be enough, right? You would think, okay, that's it, I'm done with it. But when you're in addiction, it's like it has such a hold on you. Like you want to do better so bad, but it's such a struggle to do better. And Nathan finding me in the bathroom floor. And one time I went to jail and I come home and I was going off, going crazy like a mad person, thinking that they done beat me in jail. And to find out that I had fallen down the stairs, hit a parked car, everything before I went to jail. My kids had to tell me that. Like my poor children have seen so much and they have been there every single step of the way. So to see them as grown men and to see how well they are, I'm just so proud of them, you know, because like I said, the things that they've been through, no child should have to go through, you know, no child. And I know my addiction came later in life. I mean, I was 20, I say later in life, but I was 25 the first time that I used. But my children grew up in that. You know, they grew up with a mother that was inebriated, you know, on Xanaxes. Gosh, I talked to my boyfriend about this multiple times, like the loss of memory, you know, significant things that I don't have memory of. Like, and you should know, like, I remember a get together. I know I was there. There's pictures I was there, but I have no memory of being there. You know, like that is just horrific, but it still wasn't enough. The only way that I was able to get clean and sober was giving my life to the Lord. Amen. And He delivered me. Yeah. And I know for myself, and the Lord has showed me this. I've told my children, my mom, my boyfriend, for me, I can't even smoke a cigarette. When I tell you one excuse behavior is all it takes, I'm dead. And I know that. I know that the Lord has delivered me from smoking. He's delivered me from craziness. He's delivered me from, and I'm not saying I'm above getting high, but I just know that I have the Lord and that the Lord is my guidance, you know, and you're never too big to fall back to it. But I do know that the Lord delivered me. And I believe that with everything in me. One of the girls along the way, while I was in prison, 21 girls come to know the Lord, you know, through each. And, you know, I held on to that. I was so proud of that for so long. And it could have been more, you know, but it's really hard. And one girl was an atheist. She was an atheist. And I'm telling you, we prayed for that girl. We fasted for that girl. Oh, but she come to know the Lord. And that's significant. But I say like all of that just to say like without God you can't do anything. You without the Lord you absolutely cannot get away from it. And the people you surround yourself with, that's a huge part in it. A huge part. And yeah, you have to surround yourself with people that want to see you doing better. And so I try to keep that. I know where I come from. And I don't ever want to go back there. I don't ever want to go back there.
Very strong and powerful to be in the shoes and go through it. And it's a very different experience even in a home that someone has done this. But I hope tonight that we see and realize just how strong of a force of power that the devil has around us. When the Bible says that he is as a lion seeking to and fro whomever he may devour, that means he is trying to get you all the time. He's trying. It don't matter what the issue is. Devil's tricks are really good. He's got a good toolbox of tricks to pull. All of that inner workings, and you say, how horrible of an experience. How horrible of experience. look at the path that God placed her in from the time she started that till the time that she's sitting in that chair right there. The Lord knew tonight that she would be right up there. Y'all know that? The Lord knew that tonight she would get to shine some light on some things that we got to never see. Holly's the only one that got to be there in the prison when the girls got saved. Throughout the time that the atheists come to know the Lord, Holly's the one that gets to tell that as part of her testimony tonight. So as much as the devil thinks he's got a foothold on things, we can overcome. It's a mind thing that we don't believe that. It's not true. That's the devil getting us to believe a lie. I do want to open the floor tonight to anybody that would like to ask Holly something while we've got her in the victim's chair.
Absolutely.
So anybody that would like to ask her something tonight, feel free. I told her I was going to give you on the floor at the end and let you ask anything you'd like to ask her about her experience or anything that she's went through and what the Lord has done. You're welcome to do so tonight. As she was open to letting me open the floor up and ask anybody if they had anything that they would like to ask or say. Now, this is a fun one. Go ahead.
I know that Rick and I have our story how God led us here, and I'm just curious how the Lord led you here to Easy Creek.
Well, so I told you I had such a desire to go to church while I was on house arrest, but that was to no avail. And I wanted to go with my children to Paul and Shannon's, but federal probation doesn't allow you to cross state lines. It does once you're off the house arrest, but not while you're on it. Well, she had messed up and let me go once, but that was a whole nother story. We took it, okay? And so Paul and Shannon, they just kept encouraging me, you know. Multiple times they would reach out, hey, if you're ready to go, you know, we'll be there. And so I told them, I said, look, as soon as I get this ankle bracelet off, I'm going to church. Like, and they had told me, you know, that how it was a non-judgmental church and how everybody here would be encouraging and uplifting. Because after the experience that I had by the church, at the church by the house, I was nervous. Okay. But again, you got to move according to the Spirit, right? You can't move on your own accord. So that was probably exactly what happened there. Again, I went against everything my children, boyfriend, everybody said, don't do this, even my case manager, but I was so hungry I wanted to. So anyway, so as soon as I got it off and I got my license, I was like, okay, I'm going. And so I messaged Shannon, I believe. Maybe it was Paul, maybe it was both. I can't remember. And I told him, look, I'm going to church in the morning. And I came that morning and try to be here every chance I get. So I think it was the Lord laid the way. I had no idea that there was anything recovery related here till Jennifer told me. You know, she got here the third week. She had been out for a couple of weeks. Then she reeled me in. And and I didn't know a single soul at this church, not a person, until Jennifer showed up and I knew her. But yeah, I ended up here because this is exactly where God intended me to be. That's what I would say. Yes, thank you.
Anybody else got anything they'd like to say?
I would like to ask a question on.
Yes.
So for those of us that have had family members that are, you know, addicted,
Mhm.
and you try to listen to psychologists, you try to get all the help you can get, people that have been through it before. But some families choose to just, what I would call, you help for a little bit, but when you see that it's not, you know, making a difference, you kind of just stop giving the money, you stop being there, you just kind of pull away, not completely, but you pull away. And I know some of that's kind of self-preservation too. And even though, you know, they tell you they want you to be there, you may say, no, I'm not coming to get you out of jail. You're just going to have to stay there until the judge, you know, you being through it and, you know, knowing God, what do you think is the best scenario? Should you pull away or should you just keep giving?
Well, I think with my experience, and I'm sure it's a case by case, I'm sure there's not like a blanket perfect fix all, but with my experience, I had to have some consequences. You know, every time I was arrested, I was bailed out every single time. And, you know, my parents are amazing individuals. My father is, he passed away in 2011, but my mom, she's an incredible woman, you know. no fault to them, right?
Yeah.
They thought that they were loving me and doing what was needed, but the best thing they could have done was just let me have some consequences, you know? And so, as hard as it was, that's what had to be done. But at that point, I couldn't even I had no bond, you know, I couldn't get back out. But, I know, you know, someone very close to me that's dealt with that same thing with their son, you know, and bailed him out, bailed him out, bailed him out until finally he said enough's enough. And he made his son deal the consequences. And his son has been sober since, you know, he went to treatment, he went to jail treatment, and he's been sober. So I do think it's more probably a case by case, but I definitely think I would caution on the enabling as from what
Thank
I've
you
been
for
through.
that,
Yes.
Some say not to enable, others say, well, you've gotta love them through the whole process. And
Well, I think too, you know, it's important to love the individual, but not the sin.
Yeah.
You know, that's something my boyfriend has talked time and time and time and time again to me about, you know, we can love that person, but not the sin that they're in. And so I think you just have to be cautious of that, because I know for myself, my parents enabled me to an unhealthy degree. And again, no fault to them, because they were parenting the best way that they knew to parent, right? And they were doing things the best way. My children, or my mom and dad, they had 5 living children. My youngest brother passed away in June. All 5 of us addicts, one form or another. My parents, neither one, but all 5 of us children addicts, one form or another. My sister actually celebrated 4 years clean today. And we have a brother that had 2 years clean September 21st. And then we have another brother that has the desire, you know, and we just want to keep praying. So, yeah. And then, like I said, my brother passed away, but no fault to our parents. You know, our parents loved us the best way that they could, and the way they raised us, you know, to the best of their abilities. But I would just, yeah, I think for me, I had to have consequences.
I appreciate that.
So you had to actually come to the prodigal son. You
Literally,
had to finally come to the halt end
literally,
and literally think about it.
Mhm.
Come to yourself.
literally.
So you think being grounded in the word is what really helps you?
100%.
to it?
100%. 100%. And I wasn't even going to share this because I think like I don't want to make it like too dark, and I'm not sure that my children know this, but very early on, I tried to hang myself. I thought, God, there's no way that I can do this. Then they sent me to suicide watch for 4 days. And if y'all have ever been to suicide watch, that is a cold place to be, okay? And but God, you know, but God knew that He had more in store than me taking myself out in that cell, you know. And anyways, so yes, I think God poured into me. I think God knew exactly what He was doing, you know. Like I said, it was program after program after program, and I mean, stamps ain't cheap, you know. But and I got a pen pal along the way. I didn't even mention that. I got an Amish pen pal along the way, the Yoders, and they have been amazing. They have supported me, pen palled me, even to this day. They still send me words of encouragement and letters. I also got Miss Sharon and Miss Jeanette from Christians Against Substance Abuse when I was at that halfway house. They got approved to come and take me to church on Sunday. So, yeah, every step of the way, the Lord has just continued to put people in my path. Like He has never once left me. Never once, you know, even when I felt lonely, God was there to comfort me. And I know it sounds cliche if you've never experienced that in and of yourself, but there's no other way to describe it, you know?
Yeah, I was an addict for years and the Lord still delivered me through the word. So
Amen. Yeah,
praise
absolutely.
God.
Yes. Thank you. Absolutely. Amen to that.
Anybody else got anything they'd like to say or ask? Anybody? If not, we always take a prayer request at the end class tonight, and if anybody has a prayer request they'd like to say, you're welcome to do so tonight before we dismiss in prayer. Has anybody got a prayer request tonight?
I do. My oldest brother is going through a trial that nobody should be going through. He doesn't deserve it. So just pray that God will turn the results to good in the end. Can't go in detail what it's about. God knows what it is. And nobody should be going through this kind of trial he's going through. So he needs to get first, you know, upliftment and just pray that God will bring him out of it. Good.
Amen.
So remember this time, any others?
Yeah, remember me, Keith, yeah, remember. There are, it's about to ceased. On my brain.
Remember this. Any other prayer requests?
I like to remember my great grandson, he's still dealing with a little bit of sickness stuff that they take him to a daycare center and all them kids just passing that stuff around to each other. And so it's hard for them little fellas to get rid of it.
Remember this tonight, any others?
I just want to say, Holly, I personally am you, how privileged I feel to know you and to have met you.
Thank you.
And
I appreciate that.
sure, continue to remember my
Remember this. Any others tonight?
Always have requests, brother. We all need prayer.
Right. Anybody else?
I have a great niece and nephew that's in trouble with drugs, the law. Remember them in prayer, they're in their twenties.
Remember this tonight. Any others?
And if y'all continue to remember my son, he has been diagnosed with a mental illness. He also has tried smoking marijuana. He thinks that's the fix to everything. I'm on the other end of it. You know, I had enabled him for years. He finally got to the point where he lost everything that he had. I mean, he has no access to his children. He has no car, no place to live. And it got to the point where he had to get out of my house. And he hasn't been back since. He's full-time in jail. And the things that he says to me, I have got to the point where I can't even take his phone calls. I can't put myself through that. And the things that he sends me in text messages, it's ungodly. But I turn it all over to the Lord. He has helped me to gain strength to get through it. But still, please remember him in prayer.
Remember this tonight. Any others?
I'd like to say something. Speaking from experience, when some things pop up on Facebook, some memories, and some of the things that I have said, ignored my mother's phone calls for days, lying through my teeth to her that I ain't got phone minutes, it'd be popping up on Facebook. Just keep praying. I would never put my mother through that again, you know, but in that moment, I'm not making excuses. You know, right is right, wrong is wrong. And my brother, he carried so many resentments for years towards our mother, for years. And he has said some crazy things, threatened to kill myself and blow my house up. He told casualty of war, my kids got killed, like crazy things. And he's clean and sober. I'm clean and sober. You know, so just keep praying. I think we say things we definitely did. I said things I didn't mean. You know, I would never ignore my mother's phone calls now. You know, never. I can't even believe I did it then. You know, and when they pop up on Facebook, I screenshot them, I sent them to my mom, and I apologize wholeheartedly to her because she didn't deserve that. But again, my mother and my children caught the benefit of all of it, you know, so I'll definitely be in prayer for your son. And for you too, you know.
Any others tonight?
gosh, I think everybody's aware of the third grader that life was lost yesterday in that accident from Ellen Myers. Just remember the family. I don't know if the grandmother, the little sister, they even know that this child is gone, so pray for them. They're gonna have to lean on the Lord.
Yeah, we went by that accident right after it happened, before the ambulance or anything, they're just laying beside the road, the police were there and waiting on the ambulance, so, yeah, it was sad.
Remember this request tonight. Anybody else?
I think, for all of us, I just want to say that we're grateful.
Thank you. I'm so glad all my kids got to be here.
Spending the 5 years, for so long, they're just, you wanna pray, you wanna help them, but for so long, you just get to a point where you wanna give up. So I'm very thankful for you. Get clean for your kids.
Thankful for this tonight. Any others? Everybody feel clear what they need to say or do? All hearts and minds are clear. Let's all bow our heads and be dismissed tonight. Lord God, we come to you tonight, Lord Father, thanking you for the time that you've allowed us to have. And God, we ask you tonight, Lord Father, that we not miss a very substantial lesson tonight, that we've got to see a miracle witness before our own face. But tonight, the word victory is spread all over a person's life and story of what one can overcome through and by the blood of Jesus tonight.
Amen.
And God, we ask tonight, Lord Father, as everybody sitting under this roof realizes that the trap that we all are sitting out and accountable to is real. And just as much as it seems so out of reach to ever be there, we're just as close right now as we have ever been to being on that line at a risk. And God, we ask more than anything tonight as we go from this way, that if this does nothing else but to get our attention, to get closer to you and stay on the narrow path, stay on the straight path, and God, do everything we can to try to do only what you tell us to do. God, we ask you tonight that no matter what people have on their lives tonight and what they're going through, that you come on the scene and do not let the devil hinder them from hearing your instructions tonight. God, we're thankful for Sister Holly and those in the family that came with her tonight, Lord Father, and we're thankful for the message that anybody can share good news that comes only from on high tonight. God, we ask as everybody travels tonight and goes home that you watch over them and protect them until the next appointed time that we meet together. And we ask it all in your name. And amen. Amen. And for anybody that'd like to join us, we're here on Friday nights at 7. Every Friday. And then this joyful confession thing going to happen. I saw, you know, those pictures are on advertising.
Are they?
Yeah, because I ain't seen none of it in real life.
Oh, now, Josh.
I think that might be Facebook photos.
Crazy.